Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us for today's live webinar entitled Agile CSA, Unlocking Efficiency in Software Testing for GxP Regulated Industries. Today's session is sponsored by and presented by Astrix. And with that, we're just going to do a quick introduction as to who Astrix is. We can go to the next slide. And then we'll do an introduction for our speaker. So if you haven't been on any Astrix webinars before, I certainly want to thank you for coming and welcome you. If you're coming back to webinars from other ones, we're glad to have you back. Astrix is a consulting company. We work exclusively in the life science sector, and we've been doing so for 28 years and bring a very unique blend of specialized strategic and technical services, as well as processes and technology agnostic services and approach that's made us a leading partner in transforming the success of life science and science-based organizations for quite some time. We operate from our headquarters in New Jersey, but we have locations throughout the globe. 90% of our staff hold advanced science degrees. That's something we're very proud of here. We are very much a science-based company ourselves, helping other science-based companies, and again, have been doing that since 1995. So that's just a little bit about who we are. So right now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, and we can go to the next slide. So Fabio Pigossi joins us from Brazil. He's a delivery manager for the computer systems validation sector within Astrix and comes with 18 years of experience in the life science sector. Again, focusing heavily on delivering informatics solutions to a variety of clients. So I don't need to obviously read your whole bio there, Fabio, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the reins over to you and sit back and enjoy the presentation with the rest of the audience. I'll be back on at the end for questions.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Fabio Pigossi here, and it's, of course, a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And I hope you guys are ready and excited to dive into the CSA and the Agile validation concepts. We're going to cover those today. So just to for the agenda that we have today, we're going to be covering the concept of CSA, of course. I want to baseline everybody on the main concepts. In addition to that, we're going to also talk a little bit about the most common misconceptions that we have. Then we're going to go and talk about the Agile CSA and how CSA is a good fit for Agile framework. After that, talk a little bit about tips on the implementation, and of course the little bit of the experience as well on that. And to the end, we're going to have the Q&A sessions, right? So that's going to be what we will plan to cover today. So to start, let's just talk a little bit about the traditional.
Fabio, would you like to launch the poll? Fabio, just real quick, did you want to launch the poll real quick?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's start with that.
No problem. I'll go ahead and launch that. Folks, before we start the presentation, we're going to do a little bit of a poll here. We'd like to get a sense of where folks might be at on the use of CSA. I'll launch this real quick. It's a quick, simple yes or no question. I encourage you to participate. We'll leave it open for about 35, 45 seconds or so, give you an opportunity to put your answer in. Basically, it's asking, is your company already using CSA concepts as part of your software validation process? So again, are you using CSA concepts as part of the software validation process? As we gather the results, I will share those responses in just a minute. Let's just give it a couple of seconds here, make sure everybody has a chance to get a response in. All right, I think we've got a fair number of data points here, so we'll just get ready to close this out. So there's your answer. 62% of today's participants are using some CSA. Great to hear. 38% are not. Hopefully this will help you get started down that path if you so choose. Let me go ahead and hide that then, and we'll get back to the presentation. Thanks a lot, Fabio. It's all yours.
Thank you. And sorry everyone for missing that poll in the beginning. So yeah, let's resume here. So for the traditional CSV validation, right? So everybody is aware about some of the challenges that we have in the industry regarding the traditional perspective. So we tend to have a focus on documenting everything and that because we need to show that to the agency, right? So this is something that CSA will try to demystify, because it's a risk-based approach, and of course we aim to provide value in quality to the systems that we are implementing. At the end of the day, more quality to what we are delivering for the patient, right? So some of the traditional CSV, you know that the SOPs are in general highly detailed, and sometimes, especially, and when I say SOP here, I'm talking about the SOPs to guide the the validation. So sometimes you can find even sections like including all the details and information that you must have in that section. So of course that will put you in a position that you have like you don't have a lot of rooms to maneuver, right, or to apply critical thinking for the given project you are working on. The regulatory is another point. So focus on producing compliant documentation rather than just creating quality, right? This is one key point that we need to demystify. The risk analysis is another point. So we know that there's a trend on scoring requirements towards the high risk, right? So that's also something we need to apply critical thinking, because one of the biggest gains on efficient validation comes from there. Testing is also a good point to mention. So we in traditional CSV we have most of the time detailed scripted testing. So there's of course a misconception there where people think that more testing is better testing, but that's not necessarily what that means. From the validation documentation, we know that binders and binders of documentation, and then we basically once we talk to the agency, we just bring all those and say, hey, go for it, right? So it's in there. So of course you are also once again thinking about providing evidences from everything to the agency, right? But you just there's a little bit of misconception that you forget that at the end of the day you have the ownership of your processes. So you should be able to create and apply critical thinking among your team to identify the areas that pose more risk, and then apply focus on those areas. So moving forward, I just would like to bring a little bit of the CSV evolution, right? So this started with the FDA case for quality in 2011, right? So that FDA, to the ones that doesn't know about that, so FDA were uncertain why few companies were investing in automated solutions and why so many continue to run long outdated versions of software. So that initiative, which set out to study quality best practices in medical device manufacturing, so it found that the burden of CSV deterred technology investments, and as a result inhibited quality best practices. So based on that, FDA decided to partner within the industry and try to re-engineer the validation activities, focus on more value-add activities. Of course, everything based on risk, because they are aiming to improve quality by removing those non-value-add activities. And the most important thing is focus on software's impact to patient safety, product quality, and data integrity, right? So that is the main topic here. And of course, adapt to more to modern software development lifecycle frameworks, such as the Agile framework, right? That we're going to be exploring a little bit more today. Moving to the next slide here. Just gonna go. Okay. All right. So just a little bit on the CSA perspective. So to this one, it's more like we should be worried about promoting and delivering quality, right? So what is CSA? So it stands for Computer Software Assurance. As a new way of looking the traditional CSV approach. Of course, through application of critical thinking and consideration of risk. So the focus is on what matters, right? So patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. So critical thinking is the first item that we have here, and I think that can be applied to pretty much everything that we do, even though if you're running regular CSV, right? So it doesn't make sense to think that exists one size fits all, right? So people sometimes look for a silver bullet to resolve everything, and that's not right. So you have to consider the potential risk of compromised safety and quality of the product, and to determine the level of effort or the level of assurance and effort for the activities appropriate to establish confidence in the software. So with that, you're going to aim also for being efficient, right? So we know that all companies are aiming to be more and more efficient, and that reduce cost, right? So the CSA effort is a risk-based, as I mentioned before. It follows the least burdensome approach, do more, no more than necessary to address risk and fitness to intended use. You can find the resource optimization out of that. There is another item that is important, that you're gonna be like promoting more testing and documenting less, because we know that one of the most time-consuming activities from a traditional CSV is the scripting and creating all the scripts with all the details, click by click, and that takes a lot of time, right? And sometimes the value you expect doesn't show up. I think the leveraging unscripted testing piece is one of the biggest gains for the industry. So this is where you can become more efficient, especially working with the developers, right? And we're going to be talking more about that. Avoiding performing redundant tasks. So another thing here is that, so if someone, in this case, the vendor, right? Because we know that 90% of our time we're going to be implementing commercial off-the-shelf solutions. So if the vendor already provided documents, already executed testing in similar servers and installations, so why not take advantage of those tasks that have already been executed, especially for lower risk requirements. So that's also something that will increase the efficiency. So from the FDA CSA guideline, we pretty much have 4 pillars, right, to support that. So the first one is identifying systems intended use. So this is where you're going to be determined whether software is intended for as part of production or quality system. So if it brings a direct or indirect impact to production or quality system. So after that, you have like the determination of risk-based approach. So this is where you're going to be determine the level of risk if software were to fail to perform as intended. So once again, take into consideration patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. The third one is determining the appropriate assurance activities. So you're going to be identifying the appropriate assurance activities to commensurate with the risk, right? This is, of course, where testing comes to play. And the fourth one is establishing the appropriate records. So you should be capturing evidence to demonstrate that the software was assessed and performed as intended, right? But you should be capturing that in an efficient manner, right? So the thing is sufficient records, right? We know that a lot of companies try to take screenshots of everything, every single step, but that doesn't add value, right? That basically you're not doing that for promoting quality to your company. You're doing that just to show to the agency that you executed step by step of those scripts. So covering those 4 items, we will be talking a little bit more on every one of those. So the first one here, which is the identifying intended use. So this is where you're going to be defining from a more high level perspective where your software fits in, right? So what is the intended use of your system? So consider software as part of production or quality system, automates production processes, inspection, testing, or collection and processing of production data. So those are part of the systems that have direct impact in production and quality. Automate quality systems processes, maintain quality records required by 21 CFR 820, right? So those are the ones. And then from a risk perspective, you have all the 3 risk ratings, right? Going from high risk, intermediate risk, and low risk. So of course, those that bring more like direct impact, we know that from a high level perspective, most of the time they're going to fall under the critical ones or the high risk. However, the ones that is used to support production or quality systems may fall under the support use or indirect impact. And with that, you already know that it's not going to fall under a high risk system, right? So that's to guide you to your, identifying your system intended use. This could be used as part of your initial risk assessment. And of course, after you're going to have all your functional risk assessment that adds a lot of value to your strategy from the testing. So moving to the next one, we have the establishing the risk-based approach, and this is more towards the functional risk assessment, right? So this is where you're going to be assessing your requirements against risk and identifying the implementation method that you're going to be taking for every one of that. So just an example here we have, of course, from the risk going from none, low, medium, and high. This is related to patient safety, data integrity, and product quality. And then to simplify things, you have the implementation method. So only if you're talking about a customized feature, you're gonna fall. And of course, if that brings high risk to patient safety, you're gonna have the highest score for risk, right? And those will be mitigated accordingly. And this is where we have more granularity on how to mitigate those different risks. And the assurance method that we're going to be exploring in more deep in the next slide are all down here to this table, going from robust scripted, where you have like a higher risk, and that goes down to even negligible, where you can be just leveraging the vendor documentation if your risk analysis allows to it, right? So let's just move on and talk a little bit about that. So the determination of assurance activities. So this is where you're going to be, identifying that you're going to be able to leverage vendor documentation. You're going to be using unscripted testing. You're going to be using scripted or robust scripted testing. So after determine whether a software feature, function, or operation poses a high risk process to the process, it's time to identify the assurance activity to commensurate with the risk. So the lower risk less objective evidences, of course, right? So, and then we have all the set of unscripted testing going from ad hoc, error guessing, exploratory. Then the higher the risk is, more objective evidences are necessary. So you're going to have the scripted testing that can go like the robust, super detailed, step-by-step script, and also have the limited script, right? It's a mix from unscripted and scripted testing. And we're going to talk more about the unscripted ones in the next slide. So, and by the way, unscripted, to the ones that are not familiar with that, doesn't mean undocumented, right? So you still need to create some level of documentation just to make sure you have that executed. So in this case here, we start with the exploratory testing. So this is where you're gonna, by definition, it's an experience-based testing in which the tester spontaneously designs and execute the test based on testers' existing relevant knowledge prior to exploration of the test item and heuristic rules of thumb regarding software behavior and failure. So what to document in this case, right? So usually you're gonna have something like this from a paper-based perspective. So you need to define test plan and objective. You're gonna need the test pass or fail statements, right? Or even the checkbox. You need the failure in its details. So if you find any issues, you need to document them. And also you need test conclusion. And of course, you need attributability, right? So you need to record who executed that and when, right? So that's required, but you don't need step-by-step instructions like go to the button, click to that button, open the screen X, Y, and Z, identify that you have the sample in the right-hand corner, you know, all that descriptive part, you don't need that here. So it's going to be very objective. So verify logging with a good user name and password. Verify error and handling when identify password entered for the correct username. So, you know, very strict to the point, and then pass or fail, and then at the end you sign off as the tester. But of course, to do that from an exploratory perspective, you need experience on the system, right? You cannot just grab someone that never used the system and put that as a tester. So also in the unscripted testing, we have the error guessing. So this is a test design technique in which test cases are derived from the basis of the tester's knowledge of past failures or general knowledge of failure modes. So in terms of documentation, you need to document even less than the exploratory, but it's the failure and its details, it's important to have, as well as the test conclusion, and of course the attributability, right? So, you know, who executed and when. In addition to that, I usually have in our templates the test description, just to give some context to that test. But of course, very high level and you know, objective oriented. So after that, we have the ad hoc, right? So that the concept is derived from unscripted practice as well, that focus primarily on performing testing that does not rely on large amount of documentation to execute. Very similar to the previous one, you have you know, a lot of freedom in terms of capturing the testing information. So in general, we use like test description, only deviations in failures if found, test conclusions, and the tester sign-offs at the end, right? So moving to the fourth pillar here, we have the establishing appropriate records, right? And instead of just bringing the information about that, I decided to add this item, and this is available from you know, the CSA FDA guideline. So just to give you an idea from a considering a report COA example. So we have here features and functions. This is going to be our requirements, right? So this is where you have all the requirements. So for example, the LIM COA report should be capable of reporting sample test results. The test results are that are out of trend, out of specification shall be tagged accordingly. So determine the intended use of those features and functions. So these functions are intended to for the collection of record and recording, for that sample trending, monitoring, as well as product release decision purposes. Then you have your risk-based analysis. So failure to these functions to perform as intended may result in a product quality problem that may impact patient safety. So this, of course, already points out for us to a high risk perspective, right? So if it's a high risk, it's critical. So the assurance activities determined for this one to commensurate the risk will be supplier evaluation and installation activities, and of course detailed scripted testing protocol that exercise the possible iterations and potential ways the functions could fail. So here you can incorporate multiple scenarios, including boundary results, to provide assurance that the functions work reliably, right? So that's the assurance activities. And then what you're going to be capturing from the appropriate records. So we are talking about high risk. So this is like more, you need to be more, it's more dense in terms of the records. So you have the intended use, you have the risk determination, the detailed test protocol, and then from the protocol, you're going to have all this, right? So pass or fail results for each test case, any issues found in its disposition. You have the concluding statement, noting that the performance of the operation is acceptable, the testing that was performed and who performed the testing, the signature and date of the appropriate signatory authority. So those are the ones that you're going to be using as the appropriate record. Okay, so moving forward, let's just talk a little bit about some of the CSV, CSA main misconceptions, right? So the first one, CSV and CSA are the same thing. No, they are not the same thing. So CSA is an evolution of CSV, aiming to improve efficiency and effectiveness. The second one, CSA reduce compliance requirements. So CSA does not reduce compliance. It emphasizes smarter compliance based on risk and intended use. CSV is obsolete. CSV is still, widely used. So CSA is just the new recommended approach, but may coexist during industry transition. And I think to this, I tend to avoid like, this is CSV, this is CSA. So I prefer to, use like lean validation or risk-based validation, because at the end of the day, if you apply critical thinking, you're gonna be able to, be using CSA concepts already, right? So it's, I just don't think it's like very necessary to be taking those acronyms and saying, oh, it's towards one or the other. So CSV can also be applied to Agile framework projects. So traditional CSV is not suitable for to support Agile frameworks, right? So this Agile frameworks focus on interactive approach and deliver fast solutions. So of course, if you have a heavily documented process, and especially without leveraging tools for that, it's hard to accommodate that in the Agile framework. FDA will not accept CSA over CSV, and that's of course not true. So in fact, FDA is actively supporting CSA and has released drafted guidance encouraging its adoption. On CSA, you don't need formal test scripts. So under CSA, unscripted testing, ad hoc testing, and exploratory testing are all acceptable when justified by risk. Unscripted doesn't mean undocumented. Only large companies can implement CSA. So CSA is scalable and arguably more beneficial for smarter teams on resource-constrained organizations, as it avoids overburdening them with unnecessary compliance activities. Okay, so those were one of the items that that we found as misconceptions. So of course, CSA is important, and we just mentioned in a couple of the bullets there that this is more suitable for supporting Agile frameworks, right? So, however, we also know that Agile is not for everything, right? So, you let's say you have a process in your company to implement I would say laboratory equipment. So if you're not dealing with software development lifecycle, why you're going to be leveraging Agile to that, right? Doesn't so it's more towards if you are developing systems, right? Software. So that's the goal. So as CSA supports Agile framework, focus on delivering quality and value to the customer at the speed and in an incremental fashion, enabling technical innovation and flexibility. So this is to the ones that are not familiar with Agile. This is just the Scrum module, right? So you can find that in the scrum.org. So basically, we have a product backlog. All the requirements or the user stories are part of this backlog. Then you have sprint planning, where your product owner, the Scrum Master, will be participating, and then defining all the priorities for a given sprint. And then you have the sprint backlog that will be assigned to the Scrum team, and that team will be working on developing the functionalities and, of course, satisfying all the user stories that are part of that sprint. You're going to get to an end with an increment, and then there's sprint reviews. If for some reason a story is not completed during that sprint, it goes back to the product backlog. But the mandate is the sprint will never stop, right? So you're going to be moving like a clock, right? So you have a cadence to move. So of course, the Agile is challenging for GxP environments, and we also need to consider some to open our mind for some of the Agile artifacts, right? So instead of thinking about all the deliverables that the regular traditional CSV produce, we should be thinking differently and trying to re-engineer the process, taking the Agile as the foundation, and then sort of incorporate what's needed from a GxP perspective into that framework. So just to give you an idea, if we're talking about requirements, right? So we are like more towards what we call user stories and its acceptance criteria from the Agile perspective. So this is different from requirements. Even the way it's written is different. So however, you can have like one user story with multiple acceptance criteria, and those needs to be met, right? So that also gives you an opportunity in terms of testing. So another thing is the continuous user engagement. So this is where you are eager to collect feedback from the user sooner than later, because with that, you're going to see if you are in the right or in the wrong path, especially if you are working with innovation, right? So that's where Agile is super valuable. So the developed and outdated over time. So once again, you have the freedom to make the changes as necessary as you go through the sprints. So another thing is acceptance versus approval. So we know that we are always expecting from requirements to be approved, but from Agile, we have like more the user stories being accepted by the product owner, and the product owner is on behalf of the users. So that person will be the one that will be accepting the stories. Design for continuous change. Deliver minimum viable product. That's also important, because this is where you don't necessarily need to wait like a year to have your users, wetting their feet for the first time in the system that you are implementing. So of course you won't be able to implement everything in the first beginning, but once you define your minimum viable product, why not to put that into production and start collecting feedback from users? And also, of course, innovation mindset, right? So information records versus documentation. So this is another important thing here. So why not, like, if we're talking about Agile artifacts, if we're talking about user stories that sometimes are similar, have the similar content of requirements, why not leveraging that instead of trying to spend a lot of time massaging that information into like the system shall do blah blah blah, right? So why not leveraging? So this is efficiency, right? This is critical thinking. So where possible, why not to do it? So from a framework perspective, right, taking into consideration the validation as well, this is just another way of visualizing that. So you still have, your requirements in your product backlog, all the user stories. You have your product owner that I mentioned before that will be accepting the stories. So you have your PA and dev team that will be selecting the stories that will go under a sprint. You're going to have your stories, grooming, sprint planning. You're going to be defining the acceptance criteria for those stories. And there will be also a level of reviews and approvals, right? But then my point is that happening in paper documentation? Of course not. So leveraging automated tools is crucial to make that happen. So from then we go to the devs Kanban board. So all the stories assigned to those devs, development work starts. At the same time, we can have the functional testing, and that can be, everything can be unscripted, right? Because we are doing like low level testing. So you can take advantage of your devs, especially on their peer reviews perspective, by doing the functional testing. So verifying that, especially from exploratory and error guessing perspective, so you don't expect any errors in terms of functional testing, right? Another thing here is that we should not just keep in mind OQPQ and all those acronyms, right? So the lower level or functionality will be verified on the functional test. So once the acceptance criteria is met, we're going to also have like deviation handling, because that's part of this the process, right? And then you're going to have your sprint demonstration, so where the stories and the configuration will be demonstrated to your clients. But at the same time here, the validation team is working on the risk assessment of those stories, and that happens in conjunction with the developers, because they have the knowledge on the complexity and how hard it is to implement that, how what is the level of coding necessary. So you can also be starting to create altering your test scripts, right? So for the ones that pose more risk, that your unscripted testing won't be necessary. You're going to be creating your scripted testing, and of course get that your post approvals. So then you go to a sprint that you will pose more. I would say that goes more to a verification sprint, where you have one or multiple increments that you're going to be verifying. You can have the deployment to do that in validation environment. You execute your scripted testing. You have your defects management. You have your traceability matrix. Of course, remember, forget about the paper-based documentation, everything from tools. So if you have user stories, if you have your everything documented in a tool, you can create reports, and if needed, you can extract information from the system out of those reports. That's why we mentioned before that instead of documentation, we should be talking about the records artifacts, right? So it's a mindset change, and then update the any relevant SOPs. So only after that you're gonna be moving this to production, and you can have your validation summary report to release that the sprints, the increments, or the minimal viable product into production. Okay, and of course, to cover that, we must embrace digital, right? So shift it from document-centric validation towards digital. So we know that from document-centric perspective brings challenges to the current industry needs, does not fit to the velocity of digital transformation, and there's a competitive disadvantage as well, right? Because maybe your competitor is already running in an agile perspective and can put products in the market faster than you. From the digital perspective, try to leverage electronic validation tools or electronic software development lifecycle tools, and on top of that, automated testing as possible, right? Because if you are working agile, and depending on how you plan to implement things, regression testing can be one of the burdensome pieces. So if you have automated testing tools to run the regression testing, especially like on the happy path perspective, it can give you a lot of value and save a lot of time. So this is why to run agile, you need maturity, from a company perspective, where you need many areas involved, and especially software engineering and IT, because you need to leverage those lifecycle tools. So some elements to consider: more adaptive and streamlined approach to validation that aligns to agile development practices. Validation resources and responsibilities are involved in early in the process. Developers peer review and testing add value to the validation and should be leveraged. Scripted testing efforts concentrated on critical risk to patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. Focus on functional testing and in user testing. And then I just bring here a first steps towards Agile. So this is one experience that we had. So we had a project, pharma project, LIMS implementation, LIMS, commercial off-the-shelf LIMS. Initial phases, that implementation had like multiple phases. The developers were running Agile. However, validation were concentrating in traditional paper-based, validation. Deployments occurring in a waterfall perspective, of course, right? Because we had here a sort of a waterfall, if that word exists. So used to take several months. Leverage vendor documentation, of course, because as I mentioned, you apply critical thinking. You can take advantage of what's provided, but we still stick with URS, FRS, FRA, and all those documents, right? Then we improved from a more towards Agile. So we leverage Agile artifacts, so user stories and its acceptance criteria. Basically, the acceptance criteria almost served as I would say, mimicking a functional requirement, because our functional tests, we would need to meet the acceptance criteria based on that. Mindset change on the traditional CSV deliverables, of course. Artifacts managed in ALM. This was another gain. Tests and defects also managed in ALM. Testing created within the sprint. More SMEs informal testing applied. So you are adding quality already, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't want bugs in production. high-level PQ, so workflow driven. So this is an opportunity for you to verify your SOPs are super aligned with your use, your intended use, and the IQs were also in a high level, so you can reuse them moving from a deployment to another. Deployments can happen in a couple months, instead of several months. So the benefits we identified, like more move away from paper-based, introduce CSA concepts and unscripted testing, leverage devs functional testing, incorporate agile artifacts such as user stories in its acceptance criteria, approval cycle reduction, reduce time on testing, execution, and creating the RTM. We know that's painful, right? If you can extract that from a electronic tool, the better. Critical thinking mindset on value add activities, and of course there's still opportunities for improvement, right? Because if you change processes, it's important to monitor what needs and what have opportunities to improve. So I would say an automated testing tool coming to play could also add value to this. So from an implementation perspective, I think piloting is key, right? So start with small projects. Don't try to take the bigger ones for that. What is needed from an implementation perspective? So access or assess your existing documentation and processes. Identify your maturity level from your current processes to be able to move forward with CSA. Critical thinking and simplified requirements risk analysis. It's important. Leverage vendor documentation, right, including out-of-the-box testing. But of course, to do that, you need to embrace or work together with your quality team, because those vendors needs to be qualified, right? So you have to audit those vendors. Incorporate unscripted testing based on risk. Implement electronic validation or software development lifecycle tools. Leverage testing performed by devs. Update your SOPs only afterwards, right? If you're implementing, why are you going to be worried about, oh, but my SOP is not 100% aligned with the content of CSA. I don't have anything about unscripted testing. So, produce your validation plan in a very robust manner where you can justify that, because like I said, we already have guidelines. We already have a SPE GAMP5 second edition supporting that. So once you establish your piloting, you can then worry about updating your SOPs. Define templates for your unscripted testing. That's a good practice as well. And then from a change management perspective, so I think you should, involve a cross-functional team to discuss and set up the right fit for your company needs. Take the time to rethink your process and add value to it. Ensure QA and IT collaboration, right? Those needs to be working with you. From a leadership support, train leadership and communicate clear goals. This is a top-bottom mentality change, and leadership support is fundamental to engage the team. From a communication perspective, of course, I think the point is communicate. So communicate effectively through your organization levels involved in this change. Promote trainings on concepts such as lunch and learn sessions with hypothetical scenarios to challenge people thinking. Open discussions also can be part of that change management process. Create support materials and share with the all interested parties. And from training perspective, right? So create training materials to support all that I mentioned. Promote not only reading but also instructor-led training sessions. I think this gets more, you're going to have people more engaged with that and ask questions. Promote roles and responsibilities training, because they need to understand the roles that they're going to be playing once you have a new process being established. And of course, open for measure what you're doing, if it's when it's going well. If not, continuous improvement is always important to support that, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I have for today. And now I think we can respond some questions.
Fabio, thank you so much. Great presentation, very thorough, very detailed. We do have a lot of questions on the floor, so I think what we'll do is we'll try to tackle, given the time here, I think we'll try to tackle about 3 questions, and then the rest we'll try to get with you in a direct follow-up. So let me try to be fair to everybody. There were some that came in right at the beginning, and we'll come back to some ones that came in a little bit more recently. Firstly, let me stop the recording.